We're talking about the flight model. Yogi Klatt has responded to a comment about some of the flight stuff going on in Spectrum. I thought this was a good time for us to do a little update. For the people who maybe have missed recent news, we're going to talk about what he has to say here about current goings on and the future of the flight model. And then we're going to look back at the ISC episode from, I think this was December or late November, to listen in on how master modes is changing. Because if anybody forgot, they're basically shuttering master modes and moving the functionality into operator modes. And with the recent monthly report, we've also confirmed they are allowing the actual engineering and component sort of format of the ship to help dictate your maximum speed and acceleration. So there's some interesting things coming to the flight model. They're not coming soon, but we get a couple of little tips here. I know, flight model stuff. It's gonna... Comments are gonna be fun. All right, let's get into it. The post is asking, I went through the settings again and discovered some new ones and some bad or good interactions. When I flew into a hangar and extended landing gear, I was still afraid of ramming into a wall due to the remaining momentum. Now I understand how it works, but the problem with this is that it reduces thrust force generally. But if you turn that nasty proximity assist off, then reverse thrust is no longer gimped, but at full force. If you have both settings enabled, then you can hardly brake properly, not even with boost. On my 300i, for example, it reduces 3.5 Gs of reduced thrust to 1 G in proximity, and even just 0.6 Gs in landing mode. I get what they're saying with the problem, but in general, I think this is just like a unpolished flight model kind of problem. It's like it's still not, we still don't have a great way to move around in close areas, and we don't have a radar that shows us our whole area. Oh my god. I don't want landing cameras. I need a whole 3D overlay of the surrounding areas so that when I'm flying in a hangar, when I'm landing on a planet, when I'm flying in a cave, when I'm flying around other ships, I can see the things around me in some kind of wire grid format, like in Elite Dangerous, or like in what we used to have in Star Citizen. And I know the UI folks are working on that. I just wish. And yeah, there's also the acceleration limiter, right alt plus the mouse wheel, but it's a little cumbersome. I think it's better if you have a set of sticks, but it's certainly, it's a bit rough to try and use in a quick succession. All right, so Yogi responded directly to this. Yeah, the acceleration limiter, I know. Yogi responded directly to this by saying, automatic slowdown does not reduce the thrust force, which is actually, I think, the acceleration limiter that does. It is simply an enforced speed limiter that reduces your thrust between 20 to 30, or reduces your speed between 20 to 30 meters based on the proximity assist results. Proximity assist itself does cut down the available thrust, which from our perspective is not wanted at this time anymore. Okay. I see. So automatic slowdown is different from proximity assist then? Automatic slowdown is like when you put on your landing gear and stuff like that. The updated flight model, which is the post-master modes iteration that is currently in the works and which will be shipped along with the new quantum travel experience and control surfaces, has a few changes in that regard. This is a really important sentence. Okay, so people really didn't like my clickbait thumbnail last time when I was like, the master modes are dead, kind of. But this, like, they're moving on from it. Not in the sense that they're, oh, the functionality of it is not what we wanted. But they're getting rid of master modes because what master modes does is it separates flight models. That's it. That's what master modes is. Master modes is not slowed down speed. It is not weapons working a different way. It is not your ship flies different in atmosphere. All of those are different parts of the flight model that they are still working on separately. Master modes is literally just the ability to change between two modes. So in that sense, they're getting rid of it because they don't need it, because they have operator modes. They had two different ways of switching modes, operator modes and master modes. So now they are eliminating master modes and just having operator modes, okay? So it's okay to say that master modes is going away because it's the same thing as saying, I don't know, that the space travel program was going away when they were shuttering the space shuttle. It wasn't actually leaving. They were just moving on to other projects that did the same thing. And you don't have to be mad about it. It's okay. It doesn't mean that we were all terrible for being okay with it. It just means that like they have worked their system and figured out a better way to do what they're trying to do that hopefully runs better with the game. But this is also an important sentence because he says the new mode that they're talking about, which is what we're going to hear about right here, is shipping with the new quantum travel experience and control surfaces. That's a really big deal. This is the first time they've really given us any idea of what's going on with control surfaces as far as a release goes. So for control surfaces, just to quickly put this into context and perspective, basically, control surfaces are going to make all ships fly based on their aerodynamics. A lot of you might remember they introduced lift and thrust before, but it was a generalized model. They are now transitioning to the point where every flap and physical feature on your ship will affect how it flies in atmosphere. So if you're flying a Caterpillar, tough luck. If you're flying a Gladius, you got a bit of an airplane underneath you. And the Gladius is actually already seeing some of this functionality in 4.1. Not sure if it has an actual effect on your flight, but they are starting to put in the functional flaps and the moving around wings and all that kind of stuff. And this is going to be important because the way that flight works right now is your thrusters are always firing. And you'll see this when you're flying around in atmosphere, you see your maneuvering thrusters fire. This is not a good thing. You don't want your thrusters to be firing all the time. Maneuvering thrusters are meant to fire occasionally when you need to make big changes, especially in space. You're supposed to be mainly relying on your main driving thrusters, or your VTOLs. So those are always firing and you can rely on those. But with this updated change, they're going to make it so that lift is driving your ship forward and your thrusters can turn off while you're in atmosphere. If you go too slow, your ship can stall. And if your ship stalls, your thrusters kick in. Those thrusters will produce heat, which makes them take damage over time, adding to wear and tear and maintenance costs. So this encourages people to fly their ship like an actual ship. It means people will do less of their floating over an outpost pointed straight down, shooting at random people flying around, because they'll actually need to keep moving to keep the aerodynamics lifting them. This means that if your ship has VTOL thrusters, you'll take less wear and tear while you're hovering, so you'll be able to outlast other people. Good when you're doing things like mining and salvage. And in general, it will make the flight model a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more realistic, and for a lot of people, more tuned in and physicalized. Here is an example of this, a very brief example of how this works from CitizenCon last year.
Well, he gets authority back over this control button. The button is called thrust disconnect, because at the moment in the PU, when you go through a planet, you're using the thrusters to rotate. We're not doing that anymore. So Brent, disconnect the thrusters, please, and put the ship into a purposeful stall. A stall happens when the airflow over a wing ceases, or over a lift surface ceases. And then at some point you will not have any authority anymore, and your ship will not turn and so on, and you will basically fall out of the sky. That is naturally a state that every plane wants to avoid naturally, right? And this is happening right here. Brent is not able to use the control surfaces right now because the ship is in a process of stalling. However, the airflow will pull the nose back into the wind, and once you have enough speed, he can actually, well, he gets authority back over these control surfaces. That means for you as players, what you can actually do, you can do aerobraking, you can do pure gliding if you want to. You can even do like competitions like, I don't know, like drop ships out of orbit and then see how far they glide. This is all possible with a new system. So let's talk about the problem, how do you come to a stop now? To come to a stop with the new system, you need to purposefully put the ship into a stall. But don't worry, when we don't have the thrusters disconnected, IFCS will help you. So you're gonna bring down the speed more and more until you're reaching stall speed, which is about now. And then the thrusters will kick in and catch you. That means, however, you are now in a state that the thrusters don't like, right? So at the moment we have turned this up, but in the future you will not be able to hold this for long.
So that,
Brent, for
that
example,
right there,
now from a hover,
that's the most important, in my opinion, that is the most important part of this change, is you can't hover. This is a problem that has plagued Star Citizen for its entirety of its life. People have been able to do whatever the heck they want with any size ship, in any orientation, in any atmosphere, which is like not, it doesn't make sense. They're like, what's the point of giving a small ship if your big ship can fly and act the same way? So I think this is a really important part of the change. And like was mentioned, honestly, you're right. I don't think they're going to do this is not going to be Microsoft Flight Simulator or DCS level of aerodynamics and simulation. It will probably be stripped down and more basic than them, but it will depend on your ship. And that's ultimately the point, is just to make sure that ships actually have some specialization and benefit from the features that they give up or they take for other reasons. Now, the rest of this post did have some more information on it. We'll continue with. Here are some of the changes that are coming along. Proximity Assist has been rewritten from the ground up. Instead of acceleration limits, the new Proximity Assist is based on only an adaptive speed limit. Based on several conditions, closeness to the environment, obstruction along the TVI, and ship stability, Proximity Assist will contextually enable and cut down the max speed of your ship. That allows you to do more very smooth landings or careful maneuvers in tight spaces without using the speed limiter. That would be cool. Now, before PvP sweaters go into shock here, contextually it only enables when you are maneuvering carefully already. It will never enable during hard maneuvering, and you can of course turn it off. There are two separate options whether your landing gear is on or off. You can also force it by holding the boost button. So far in internal tests that works quite well. That's interesting. Wait, you can force it by holding the boost button. Wouldn't that just meet your speed limiter if you're holding the boost button? Either way, I like that you can turn it off and then use it as a toggle. That's pretty nice. The second point here is the automatic slowdown option has been removed entirely because the new Proximity Assist takes care of that in a more flexible way. We don't have any dates when we can ship this out to players. As I said, this will likely be coming along with the new Quantum experience and control surfaces. Those two are not yet ready for multiplayer. Probably still tuning them for Squadron. So the Quantum experience is also a big part of what's coming in, because with Quantum experience updates, we will be seeing not just the new Quantum system graphics and functionality, which looks pretty freaking sick.
Let's show that. And take your hands off.
So for Quantum travel, the new mechanic is basically going to be a little more interactive, requiring probably having like a navigations officer on big ships or something. But you'll see here that you have to keep the ship centered on the Quantum bubble in order to stay within it for the first maybe 10 seconds of the trip, just to make sure that you stabilize, and then you go all the way. It's just a slightly new mechanic to the feature.
Locked. You can now go hands off. Okay, so there's a second variant of Quantum travel. And
yeah, as mentioned in chat, another important part of the Quantum travel update is that this will physicalize the entire process. So instead of just being moved along the spline, the ship will actually be moving through the space also means that we might not be able to quantum travel through asteroid belts, but we'll talk a little bit more about that at a future date. Here is one of the most important parts of this update that's coming with quantum travel soon.
Oh, actually, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so what Brent is currently showing here is, I think I forgot to mention, quantum boosting works in every direction. You don't need nav points.
And this will help us with navigating around planets. This will help us with getting to our friends faster. This is, free direction quantum travel is going to be such a boon for this game. Oh man, that's a big deal. So, no, none of this is 4.1. None of this is next patch. This is all just being talked about right now. I'm just telling you because this information is being shared on the forum. But it is the work that is currently ongoing with the flight model. Yeah, so Yogi just got a little active over the weekend, talked a little bit about. This is great. The devs are a lot of times just on the forums answering some questions here and there. Now I'm going to drop us into a little talk that they had over in December about the kind of specific change coming to this system. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but this will lay it out in a little more confident talk, what they're actually going to do.
In the room here, master modes. We'd been talking about master modes for quite some time,
here we go.
Building it up as the big savior of the spaceship combat experience. It released to mixed reviews at times. You know, some people are for it, some people are less than for it. We'll just say that kindly. I want to talk about what our plan is, what our vision is. Where are we going with this? What is the plan moving forward with master modes? And I'm just going to take off and leave you two here. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Right?
Yeah, I don't want to be in that.
I think the big thing around master modes is that it's never was designed to be a static piece of development. We always wanted to make sure that we were adding in new systems as they came along that then influenced those design decisions that we made at the time. And I think two big pieces of feature work that we're going to be bringing to Star Citizen that's going to have a drastic change on how we implement master modes is going to be crafting and quantum boost. So right now with master modes itself, we have obviously the two master modes, SCM and NAV. A big thing is that we're going to actually be demoting or converting those modes from master modes to operator modes. What that inherently means is that we're still going to have a mode that is dedicated to fighting and having combat. There is going to be a mode that's dedicated to your quantum. But we're going to be removing some of the fail-safe restrictions, yes, that had when you're switching between these modes. We're going to be moving towards one cohesive speed between all operator modes. That speed is going to be more akin to what you'd imagine SCM speeds are now. But there's two big, huge caveats that come into that. First off is crafting. So crafting will allow you to upgrade your ship and to tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you want to have combat at higher speeds, if you have a tier 5 ship and you have the best thrusters and you've specialized, you've bought an interceptor ship, that will be more applicable to those types of ships. So that gives people options to choose, like I want to have this type of gameplay versus this type of gameplay. Having that cohesive, unified speed, the one thing that we really need to address is this kind of like nav flight mode that is kind of, it sits in this very odd position in terms of you get out of an LZ and you're flying up to the space station, in atmosphere, your speed is really closer to SCM speeds anyway. You're not flying at 1,000 meters a second. You can pick up start a bounty hunter mission now, be sent to another planet, and then the closest quantum point to that POI might be 500 kilometers away.
Dude, raise your hands, guys. How many times has that happened when you're like, okay, I hit the OM, I'm ready to head down to the outpost, and you look and it's like 800 kilometers. Like, okay, I'll just step out of the side of my ship and fall down there. That's good times.
And that means that, as we add more dense POIs, that's going to only exacerbate this situation because we can't have quantum markers everywhere. And when we start to add more space exploration and more missions towards the different guilds that we're operating on, where you're having to go into deep space and go into these large distances, you don't want to be in a position where that's taking such a huge amount of time. We want you to be spending more time doing the mission than flying there. this is where Quantum Boost comes in. Now, the way that Quantum Boost works is kind of, it connects your flight speeds to your quantum travel. So quantum travel is for flying millions of kilometers away when you have a specific quantum marker that you're flying towards. Then you've got your flight speeds, which should be, you know, say sub 20 kilometers, where you're flying around, exploring on the planet, or fighting at a POI, or doing a bounty hunting. But anywhere above that, we want to kind of accelerate that process of that navigation. And Quantum Boost goes all the way up to your top speed of SCM, or top speed of our flight mode, your current nav mode, all the way up to essentially a tenth of quantum travel speed.
The way he says that is weird, because that makes it sound like it makes it sound like Quantum Boost gives you the ability to control your speed, but I'm not sure that's the case. I'm pretty sure he's just saying like it ramps up from the top of what our current nav mode is up to there. Because I don't see how Quantum Boost would be a different sort of speed when they've already dictated that it's like 10% of whatever our quantum travel is. But maybe that is the case. I think it just sounds a little weird there. Feels like a long distance while you're in a spaceship, even at full throttle. 500 kilometer feels like forever. Yeah. It's also like when you're like half a kilometer away from something and then you tap the button on your spaceship and suddenly you're right next to it. The scaling is very strange. Isn't flying there part of the mission? You thought that this was the everything game isn't flying part of everything. Wait, what? You thought this was the everything game isn't flying part of. Oh, I see. Yes. Well, you still can fly there. The point is you get the choice to do it. He's trying to make it sound faster. I actually think he's trying to make it sound slower than it is. Because it goes really freaking fast. I don't know why in the world they're even mentioning the top range of navigation mode. Nobody's going to be interested in quantum traveling at that speed.
SCM, or top speed of our current nav mode.
Like if you're looking at Quantum Boost, you're looking to fly tens of kilometers at the minimum. Why would you care about going 1,200 meters per second? It's just a interesting distinction.
To essentially a tenth of quantum travel speed. You have this spectrum of speeds that allow you to navigate the large spaces in our game, but also then still stay true to some of the intentions that we delivered with master modes.
Master modes we talked a lot about, and the combat side broadly staying the same. The nav side that was
one-tenth the speed of quantum travel. Quantum travel itself is a fraction of light
not
speed.
Fast enough. The amount of times we watch new players go into nav,
still super fast,
go towards a station, and then we'd be sat there going, they've not stopped in time. So Quantum Boost was always supposed to be that bridge gap, and without it, we were left with this sort of nav mode that didn't quite do what we wanted. And it also, because it's quantum and it's creating a bubble around your ship, allows us less friction in the traversal, because you go in quantum, you come out quantum, you don't have to apply all this G-force.
The rules of physics
are different because you're not physically hurtling at that speed, you're wrapping a bubble of time and space around yourself. So you come out, you can stop dead, you're not having that expanse moment where you're all being ripped apart from the G-force. So you see that space station coming towards you, you stop.
The one limitation that we are retaining is the fact that you can't.
We don't want to know when.
Quantum drive.
Hearing when is just going to mean disappointment.
Also your shields. And ultimately, that's a binary decision. Operator modes will start off as the default configuration that we've set in terms of the controls, in terms of the MFDs and what you're casting onto your HUD, in terms of your resource network presets. But that doesn't stop you from then going in and customizing it. We're providing an initial, hey, this is what we think is a good default setting. But then it's up to the players then to customize what they want on their cast, what they want on the MFDs, and then they have options to them. And they shouldn't have this constant switching modes to gain access to certain operator modes. You know, we're removing some of that friction.
And through all of this, because that binary distinction is between modes, you have to be in this mode or this mode, and there's all these very strict rules between those modes. You keep your weapons through all this. So this now becomes a more tactical decision in combat. But if you need that sudden burst of speed, either to get away from something or to catch up to something, you make the choice. You sacrifice your shields, certainly, but you can still bring your weapons to bear and stuff. Get there, and the second you're out.
And ultimately, that is underpinned by your resource network engineering. So if you're on
that would
a
mean
single-seater ship,
a big detail there means that countermeasures, even if they're tied to weapons, will always work too. So if you're fleeing and you are spooling up your quantum drive, and for whatever reason you are not just quantum boosting out of there, maybe you're snared or something, you will still be able to have your turret gunner firing off shots at the person chasing you, and you will still be able to fire off countermeasures. So this change is going to make it very hard to pirate a ship. Because on top of this, you also can't blow ships up anymore. You're now trying to just disable them. I mean, you can blow them up, just not as much. So piracy is going to get a lot more difficult with this, with security systems coming in, with reputation actually having a difference, with hostility starting to make a difference with gangs. And then on top of that, we are going to have better scanning functionality. So you'll be able to see which ships are dangerous and what aren't from further away. It's going to get... Yeah. Systems that are actually supposed to be safe will be safe. And you'll need to have quantum snares and EMPs in order to really effectively take a ship down.
That's obviously at the pilot's behest. But also if you're on a larger multi-crew ship, you can then use the engineering terminal to be able to have those presets available to you.
And through the use of crafting to improve your components and, of course, your presets and quantum boost, rather, you can get up to speeds that are approaching the current nav speed and stuff like that. So we're not taking that speed away. We're defaulting everything to a speed that is closer to today's SCM. Yeah. And then giving the player choices in how and when they can get up to that speed without completely disabling everything.
I mean, ultimately, it allows us to keep the default. We're trying to move towards a balance across the game where you can start off easier and it gets harder. So we want the default to be open and compatible to lots of players, but then as you start to specialize and it becomes hard to master and you start to work in the different avenues of different professions that you like, that's where you can start to customize your ship. And I think there's a key takeaway or a key point to also make is that if you don't want to craft, if you don't want to go down that route because you just want to shoot ships and be a combat pilot, or you just want to be a miner or a space trucker, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still gain access to this because player trading is going to be something that allows players to gain access to these components and ships without having to go through some of the grind that they have, and obviously they're now reaping the benefits of that. But you have lots of choice.
Obviously, there isn't one prototypical Star Citizen player. Developing a system that's going to please everybody is an impossible task. We can only work towards our goals and our vision for what we want this to be, and hope it applies to as many people as possible. What I like about this is that you can never go wrong with putting the choice in the player's hands. At any given situation, when you're going to want your speed, when you're going to want your shields, you'll always have your weapons from now on. So like this, just put those choices in the player's hands and let them let them decide for themselves. It's one of those things unique about Star Citizen is that we get to develop this, and then we don't have to wonder. We can put it into players' hands and get that feedback immediately and then take it in. I think there's a real chance for this to be the spaceship experience we've been working towards this whole time.
I think the big thing to take away from all the things that we've discussed is that none of these things are designed or implemented in isolation. And where we're trying to go is when we talk about combat that is, say, not as fast as it was in previous updates, hopefully people understand we're doing that not just because we don't like fast combat, it's because we want to give players options to gain fast combat or gain slower combat depending on what choices they make with crafting or their purchases. Then it's on a scenario where capital warfare is you need to be able to use precision targeting, and that's why we developed that feature so that you can have good subcomponent targeting. And I think when you start to see some of this bigger picture come together and you start to see all of these individual pieces connect, you might not agree with it, and there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But ultimately that's what we're trying to do. That's how we're trying to connect all these pieces together to create this experience that ultimately Chris is the one that is setting that vision, and we're trying to execute on that vision for Chris. And
I think that it's really going to come down to how, like, dampeners and snares and EMPs. I think that's going to be the sort of fulcrum of not PvP, but like ambushes and piracy. I think those are going to be pretty important. That's about it. That's really what I want to go over with the flight model. This has been a very long, much longer than I planned on it being, but really just wanted to give you guys an update on kind of what is going on with the flight model. Again, nothing's coming soon. This isn't any confirmation that it's happening in 4.1 or during that branch. This is just that somebody asked a question and somebody who knew the answers to that question was able to answer, and I wanted to let you guys know what they said and a little bit of the info that comes with it. So thanks for checking it out.